Alright, welcome back. Today I have another very exciting game for you. This is between two of the top Chinese players at the moment. Actually, Shi Yue is the number one in China right now, and KG is the number 3 as of March, and he was the number 2 in February, so he's right up there in the top players as well. And KG's really young, only 17. He just jumped from 4 dan to 9 dan because he won a major title tournament, which comes with an automatic promotion to 9 dan currently in China. So congratulations to him for making that jump, and let's get into this game. This game I thought was really interesting because these two players have very different styles. KG is very much an off-the-rails sort of wildcat player, does all kinds of things you would never expect, and Shi Yue is very composed player. Has this very relaxed style that I really enjoy watching. Really fun to see. So far, you can see this is pretty basic. White breaks up the side, black's kind of basically taking 2 corners. Black's going to approach on the inside over here because with this low stone, it's not looking like there's maybe as much that black is going to develop down here, so it becomes a little bit bigger to disrupt white's big area. Since white's, yeah, this is actually a really good principle here. At this point, we can see that there's sort of 3 large areas on the board. One at A, one at B, and one at C. So if we're looking at building something as black, we obviously have to build off of our own position, so A and C would be our obvious options to build a framework or something. So for example, if we wanted to build a framework, this move here would be possible, to build a framework off the corner. Now, in this game, this would be very dubious because this white group is basically, there's no way we're going to get a framework here, and then white would be happy at some point to approach, and this move is kind of awkward. But if we wanted to build a framework, this would be a possible move to do it. But what we can see is that, first of all, black has low stones on both the top and the bottom facing the open area, which means there's less to build off of. So building a large area isn't going to be as efficient. Whereas the other thing that we can see is that the space, like all this open space on the top and this open space on the bottom are both narrower than the open space over on the left. And moreover, white's 2 stones are on the 4-4 point. So the B area is definitely larger and easier for white to develop. So it's bigger for black to come on the inside and break up the potential framework than it is to play an approach move either at A or B. This is clearly the bigger point on the inside in this position in the game, and part of that's the low stones, and part of it's the fact that this area is bigger. And the combination of the two makes it very clear that, the approach on the inside is definitely the correct move in this position. And, since this is white's area, it behooves white to play aggressively, because, if fighting starts over here, white had 2 stones on the side, so white should expect to come to a better outcome in some way. So here, black changes direction, kind of to see. It's really hard for white to eliminate all the aji in this stone with just one move, so it's kind of something that can stay, for later. And this is really surprising because this is not a joseki. At this point, black would normally fix on this side. White would play a move, possibly at the same point here, to limit the black stone, and we'd call it good. But KG is the type of player who just, comes up with crazy variations, and this is a little much, really, because this cutting point is still pretty severe. Not that it actually works per se, but it kind of limits black's scope quite a bit. So anyway, black comes out, white activates this cut, and then jumps out himself. And you basically, white gets to sort of hem in this black group, And yeah, like this is a really dicey variation. The timing is just barely there. Um, Basically, black's going to start this ko, and in here, notice that we can't just connect here. Let white fix the situation, and this white group here only has 3 liberties, so it's if white gets the chance to come back to C, then this will be an oversized I shape, and white will actually, like, coming down to C doesn't just gain white the 2 liberties here, it also creates a situation where white has another good 4 or 5 internal liberties because of the oversized I shape. So something to, now black tries to come out, white says, no, 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 can't do that. And then this is pretty slick, just connecting here kind of forces black to do something instead of filling the ko, because white would still win that. So, and now black basically, this is black's strategy, is not that we were actually going to move out with these stones, but we're going to start a ko-fight, and we're going to use that ko-fight to get something. And in this case, white had to connect here, and black got to take the corner, so black got that. And then black is also going to get this move, and white can't. If white answers this, then this is just infinity ko-threats as you play out every joseki, letting black, continue the ko just with every move. So, not viable. And then a lot of times in this, when we make this attaching ko-threat, a lot of times the move is to hane to do the most damage. But with this really thick white position right here, I mean, this is essentially, basically, we could say like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stone wall. Given that these black stones are captured, it's like this is a huge, thick white position, and white would be more than happy to start fighting in this area. So black actually just withdraws directly, and this is kind of cool. In my opinion, white gets the better result in the lower left, just because white is so thick, and like this shape really dominates the board at this point, even though black got, fair amount of territory on the bottom and these 2 moves up here. And interestingly, these 2 moves do a lot to nullify this thickness. Like I mentioned before, if we hane right here and white crosscuts, then we kind of get into a tricky situation. But by just extending, it seems like, well, black's going to have a really easy time settling over here, and if there's just a settled black group right here, this thickness is not as valuable as, it would normally be. White kind of does this abrupt settling extension. Hane's down here, and then figures at this point, this group is safe enough that white's just going to make this extension here, which is really big, because, well, first of all, if black gets to, if white just defends here or something boring, if black gets to do this, then there's a really nasty invasion point, which I've talked about before, against this shape that you have to be careful of. And so basically, when white gets to make this 2-space extension point, black can still invade here, but notice now that, like, this 1 stone isn't weak. It's a settled group, which means this black stone is just super heavy. I don't know what black is really going to achieve with this, personally. I guess black could still kick off this ko sequence, but even this, white might be able to just surround it on the outside instead of fighting the ko because of how much stronger white is with this 2-space extension up here. Lots of possibilities. And black is just going to come straight in to the corner here. Also, or not the corner, into this extension. So, and this, definitely causes some trouble. In this case, white's just going to link on top and let black, well, black's going to turn first. But basically, white's just going to connect and say, okay, you took my base, no big deal. And now white's really kind of pushing to expand the right side. We can see if white gets to jump out over here too, there's a pretty good framework that would start to emerge. This move does quite a lot to help this connection here. And with this stone right here and these stones being fairly weak, black is just going to kind of push out here because white can't really cut per se because, creating another weak group when you've got this weak group right here is just not tenable. And you'll see that a lot. Like, it's not that the one weak group is like, killing you right now. Like, white can handle this, but white can't really go all out over here because this group is weak. It's something to think about. And here, white's just basically kind of like, okay, I'll let you take all of this. White gets this Atarian, which is really good because black could not, if black did this and white captured here, this would just be horrible for black. This white Panuki just right here in the center of the board. Like, this group is no longer weak. This stone is weak now. It's a huge reversal of fortune. So black is obviously going to connect. And then white gets this kind of, this is kind of cool that, if black does come back and do this, you've basically, this stone is more or less covering the cutting point right here. And another thing with this too is if, in this type of position, well, even if black does come back and then white, does something over here, if black does cut here, one option is to give up the one stone and become really thick in Sente. Like, in this sequence, yes, black took a little chunk of the territory and captured a stone, but, getting this wall, like, all these stones are facing the outside where they're going to continue to be useful and continue to do interesting things that affect the flow of the game. That type of result is really good. And then this is where, it's kind of been, up until this point, black has thrown out some crazy stuff, like sacrificing this big group in the lower left to take the corner and get a co-threat in over here against the upper left. Ignoring this expansion to take away the base of this group. And now white just kind of all of a sudden, it's like white's just been like going along, playing the game, and like this is the point where white's like, you overextended, I'm taking you down right now. And white starts with this extension, which is really aggressive, basically saying that, this cut doesn't matter, this Atari doesn't matter, this stone is too weak, I've got too much strength down here, and really white has got a lot of strength down here, so that is definitely true. But basically, this is the strongest move in this situation, and I'm sure that there was a lot of reading involved to make sure it worked. Now, here's an interesting thing. A lot of beginners might think, oh, I can Atari this, and then it'll be kind of, these two stones will be kind of weak. You almost, this is usually not the shape unless it works directly somehow, or you need these two stones to do something over here. Generally speaking, once you've made this cut, your initial cut should be on the more important side. So if we go back here, if this was the more important side, then this should have been the cut that was made. But since we cut over here, white extends. Now the reinforcement is that we want to reinforce this stone. We don't want to create another weak group right here, is to Atari this way. And this gives, these two stones at least have some relationship to each other, even if, white, even if you don't connect here, which you often won't, you'll often just jump out, just trying to stay really light. But yeah, that's usually the proper reinforcement, is to play the Atari that maintains connection with your cutting stone instead of creating an entirely different group. Just a small thing. In this case, black reinforces the stone directly by coming out this way, and then comes back to play this Atari. And you can see that black's investing this energy into developing this group. Whereas if we go back here, if we cut over here now, well, now if we try to do what we were doing before, you can see how these two stones really weaken, this group here. So it's just kind of, it's usually best to pick us one direction and go with it full force instead of trying to play both, trying to get both things to a little bit. It's usually not a good strategy and go. You want to decisively go for one thing. This is also kind of slick. I like this. White just connects here. Black Atari's here, but white is never going to connect and save this one stone. Like, this is just 2 points of territory that white prevented black from getting. You know, white would rather do pretty much anything else on the board, such as, you know, connecting here, keeping black from wedging and taking a big corner. And here, now see, this is again, you know, so white created these cutting stones and got out in a pretty slick way, connected to the other weak group. So that was good, because when two of your weak groups connect, like, even if they're not super strong at that point, at least you've only got one weak group to take care of. So you've reduced the number of weak groups on the board by 1. And then with this Hane, it's not really, and this, you know, cutting point or Atari or different things, you know, it doesn't look like black can play one move and seal white in. Like, if black tries to do something like this, it doesn't seem like this is 100% going to keep white from getting out in some way. So it almost looks like, you know, white would need to ignore this, do something silly over here, and then maybe after this, black has managed to seal white in, more or less. But it can't be done with just one move, so white actually goes on the attack and says, hey, you know what? This little string of 5 stones that you've got plastered up against mine, it's not actually that strong. In fact, it's weaker than my group, because at least I've got this big, gnarly fortress to run to. These stones are kind of on their own, you know, it's like their closest friend, really, is the A stone, and even that stone's on the 3rd line, it's low. You know, like, you would feel even a little bit, if black had a stone at B, you would feel a little bit better about this position, but with just having the stone at A, you know, because this stone is, you can see that it's probably not going to connect directly, because white's going to come out here to keep from getting surrounded anyway. So, kind of a tricky situation when white, you know, and this is kind of what I said, is like, from the moment that white cut here at A, it just seems like white was like, alright, this is it. Like, I'm going to take this kid down. And, you know, white peeps here. Oh, and black connects. It would be really silly to let yourself get cut into, then have 2 weak groups right in here. So, have to connect. Come out a little bit. And then, again, white just plays this all-out cutting move. A lot of times we would think, oh, okay, well, maybe we have to back off. Maybe we can get away with the double Hane, but to just go ahead and cut directly at C, that's a power move right there. And in this game, it's pretty decisive. There's no real way for black to try anything on the right now, so black has to sort of turn to the left and come out slowly. And here we see this works really well, because white needs to connect this group out anyway, and now it's also sort of an attack. Like, I mean, it's keeping this group from linking up with this group, and the prospects for this group here do not look good. It has really no eye shape, has not even terribly many liberties. The main group only has 4 right now, and with this strong white group over here, that's just a little, I would be very afraid, even if my opponent weren't 9-dan. Although maybe if I were 9-dan, I wouldn't be as afraid, but who knows. But yeah, this is a scary situation for black, because it doesn't seem, you know, with the white stones here, you know, yeah, we can Atari some of this stuff, and we can cause some ruckus, but eventually these stones are going to connect out and have at least have 2 eyes, especially because we still need a move to come back like at A, or white can capture at B, which would basically make these stones living, even if we do manage to push through here in some way. You push through it like A, B, etc. And, you know, when white comes out here, I don't see a lot. I mean, yeah, if black can swallow these 3 white stones in the center, that would be a way. But white knows that and just plays the super solid diagonal move, which basically connects. Black wriggles this way to see if there's any Aji, and white says no, there's not. Tries to cause some chaos over here, which, and then this is, you know, this is kind of sketchy, because, you know, we have to mind our own group here. And white does this really beautifully, because black cuts it off right here, and white plays the Atari, and what's cool about this is that, well, first of all, if black just connects solidly at A, and white plays you know, like maybe yeah, we just go back and use our move tool here. If black just connects with this, and then white does something like this black group is definitely surrounded now. It's not getting out, and white has one eye for sure, and when you have one eye and your opponent doesn't, you can count these mutual liberties as your own, and with these two liberties counting for white, it seems pretty clear to me that, you know, white has the liberty advantage in this situation. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8's a lot, but, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It seems like, you know, it's pretty easy for white to find a way here. So black doesn't have time. Black has to come out. Which means when white captures this, white's basically alive now. Like, these are two real eyes, for sure. Actually is alive, because, like, the worst black can do is something like this, and if black threatens to do something like this, white just connects. Black can threaten to do something like this, and worst case scenario, I guess black might be able to chop these 3 stones off, but white's still alive, and the crux of the matter is that if white loses these 3 stones in the corner and black loses this big dragon, that's bad for black. So, not really a way to handle that. Moreover, this direct cut that gets threatened by this is pretty gnarly, so want to avoid that. And then this is kind of cool because, you know, this threatens this cut here, and then this outside move actually prevents this, because now this would be a self-Atari. So black can't do that. White would just capture. Which means if black wants to cut here, black has to do really ugly things like coming out and then making a kind of a bulky dumpling shape. So black does press. White responds, staying alive. And then again, black is trying to be as tricky as possible, so you're going to cut here, and then maybe Atari out here, and see if we can make anything happen. Because again, you know, kind of swallowing these stones is still black's only real hope. And here, finally, you know, if white ignores this, black can make that aforementioned dumpling shape, and cut off the inner white stones and live. But white's not going to allow that. Come in here. And this is another really clever point where it's just like, you can tell black is really struggling. You know, these 4 stones are weak. These stones are isolated. We still don't have an eye, which is kind of sad. This point's obviously false, because we've got the 2 corner points. And we could make one by playing here, but 1 eye is not enough to live. So black, you know, does something that's, you know, pretty interesting. He threatens to pull out these stones that we've kind of assumed were captured the whole game. And, you know, this might be cause for some panic, because, you know, if we start looking at it and we're like, oh, wait, if we block here, now, you know, he's cut off these stones, and even though black only has 2 liberties, like if white were super panicked right now, white could just, you know, fill one of these liberties. Black Hane's here, like, it's looking like maybe we're getting even like a little squeeze, where it's like at some point we're going to have to spend a move to come back and take these off the board, and black has swallowed up these 5 stones on the inside. But Shi Yue realizes something very interesting about the position, which is that, you know, these stones, you know, they don't have eye shape either. And so if these 2 groups happen to connect to each other, it's not actually a big deal. So here you might be expecting white to cut to keep these stones separated and these captured. But no, white plays here. It's like, huh, neat. Black connects, but due to the nature of the position, and like with this turning move that we got in as white, in order to allow this connection, we've, you know, captured these stones, these 4 stones here, which means these are not weak anymore. And now you can see, like, this whole dragon doesn't have anywhere to go. You know, it doesn't look like jumping through here is gonna work to get eyes. So here it's just kind of, black's gonna struggle a little bit, throws in that Atari, it's going to try some odds and end things. This is kind of an interesting last-ditch attempt to do something tricky, which I thought was kind of neat. And white just kind of gives away and says, yeah, you can, because you notice that these stones are cut off now. And this dragon, it has no eyes, but it has a lot of liberties. It's definitely true. So, so white has to come out here, but white doesn't have to do anything, particularly interesting. White just comes out once and extends, and at this point, black is like, well, I guess there's no way this is going to go in my favor, and because really now, if black tries to come out again, it's pretty easy for white. I think at this point, white can just come here and say, they're cut off. These 3 stones are cut off. It's like, what are you going to do? I guess, maybe something like this. But even now, it's like, well, now white doesn't have any weaknesses. White just connects here. And if you don't, if you do play here to do this, well, white can just kind of do whatever, get a few more liberties, call it good, and go back and capture. So this is where black throws in the towel. KG resigns against the great Shi Yue. And yeah, this is definitely a hard fighting game. It just kind of seemed like all of a sudden, the game was rolling along, KG was doing his usual thing, and then just Shi Yue just clamped down on it and just very decisively, from the initial aggressive cut. Let me get into the little rapid fire action. And this is really dynamic too, because like I was saying, if white comes down like this, white gets a lot of liberties in here, because this is an oversized, I shape. So black will have to play like 5 moves to fill the liberties, white will play 1 to capture, and then black will have to play 4 moves to fill the liberties, and white will play 1 to capture. And so this gives white like a lot of liberties in the corner, way more than are obviously counted. So, it's just really crucial when white plays this. If black tries to do something else, white's still threatening to do this, which would give white a lot of liberties. So, and there's also the threat to, well, it's not really a threat. I guess you're sort of threatening to live or create some sort of living shape. But at this point, black comes back, and this is good. This is actually a big move, to get these 2 stones and take the corner. So that's pretty good. And then this co-threat, this is a really hard position to evaluate. I still like white more, just because that's a lot of thickness, and and it's right close to the beginning of the game. Like, if this was middle game fighting and there were already set positions all around, then I would prefer black. But at the beginning of the game, when this thickness down in the lower left is going to impact things for the rest of the game, that's kind of my own personal theory, is that thickness is more valuable at the beginning of the game than in the mid game. And as you get closer and closer to the end of the game, where more and more of the board is already set, territory becomes more important. I've never heard a professional put it that way formally, but it seems to make sense to me. And yeah, right in here gets that in, and then black cuts, and then just this, not like, because we could see, it's like maybe something like this happening, and then white jumping out. This would be a peaceful way to play, but giving black this capture up here makes black really strong. I guess there's still some Aji, for example, with this attachment and stuff like that, but it's not that hard to handle. Like, this would be kind of annoying, but, this white group is still really thin, and in the game, the way that white was able to handle this, I just thought was really impressive. First with this extension, just super aggressive, and then, this is kind of a good sequence to get them connected back to the weak group. And then even finding the time for this, I thought was really good, because now white's basically out. Black can't really double Hane like this, because I think directly white might be able to just do... Oh yeah, white could just do this, and if you try to cut, white just gives up the one stone, and would either play here, or could connect directly, maybe? Oh, or it could do this, and then, well, black would have an option to cut off the 3. I don't know, it gets tricky, but yeah, it's white is basically that. This tiger's mouth is really powerful in terms of giving white access to the outside, and white can actually fight all out right here because this thick group is here to lend support, so definitely good. And then how white just turns and attacks these 3 stones and eventually, or these 5 stones here, and eventually hunts them down and kills them. This was a cool game. I really enjoyed this one a lot. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that as well, and thank you for watching.